I'm going to speak from the heart, and I'm going to keep aside all the issues that convulse us as citizens day in and day out, all the things that are not going properly, all the disappointments, the depressions. I'm going to keep all that aside because today is a day to talk of permanent things, the things of permanence, and not the temporary matters. Not the matters that are coming one day, gone the next, the evanescent matters, but the things that last forever. And on a day like this, one should talk about this, and I thought that the best way to share my love and affection for Bismarck is to go back to the poets. Because the poets are the only people who know how to speak, how to use words that play on the heart and that make us in some profound way human beings again. I've tried to select poems from some of the poets that I'm really fond of, and they don't come from India. The most beloved of my poets is, of course, Rumi and Hafiz. Rumi is, of course, from Afghanistan, born in Afghanistan, but today Turkey claims him, and Iran claims him, and everyone claims him, but of course the world can claim him. And of course Hafiz is from Iran. And the third one is Pablo Neruda from South America. And I would just like to read those poems because I was trying to select them because I have a lot of collection of these poems, and I would like to select them keeping Bismarck in mind. The first one is about sorrow, because today is supposed to be also a day of sorrow in a certain sense. But I like this poem by Hafiz because it converts her sorrow into something that is needed. And sorrow is converted into something that becomes part of our lives. So the title of the poem is called Brings Life to a Field. It is not possible to complete yourself without sorrow. Sorrow is a vital ingredient that shapes the heart and enriches it. So endure sadness the best you can when its season arrives. That rain that can fall from your eye brings life to a field. And on other days when you laugh, a sun takes birth in a sky you will someday know. See how all the elements are inside of you. See how your soul is a sire, a source of light. I thought this was a very good poem because many people end with sorrow. They don't go forward. But Hafiz shows us how sorrow actually is important to fertilize whatever we want to do. It's that you don't end with sorrow. You don't end with the commemoration of Bismarck and his death. But you say, what did this man do which has improved the consciousness of people in the state of Goa? What did this man do? And how do we take that, make it part of ourselves so that we also can do similarly? The second one is about, again from Hafiz, is some fill with each good rain. And he says, there are different wells within the heart. Different wells within the heart. Some fill with each good rain. Others are far too deep for that. She was talking about Bismarck. Sudeep was talking about this Bismarck and his philosophy. Immediately I said, okay, this looks very good. This looks very promising. In one well, You have just a few precious cups of water. That love is literally something of yourself. It can grow as slow as a diamond if it is lost. Then he says, your love should never be offered to the mouth of a stranger. Only to someone who has the valor and daring to cut pieces of their soul off with a knife, then weave them into a blanket to protect you. There are different wells within us. Some fill with each good rain. Others are far, far too deep for that. Hafiz was a remarkable poet. I mean, when I went to the town of Shiraz a few years ago, and I went to his tomb, because we are talking about tombs, and tomorrow there is also a burial. And it was 7 o'clock in the evening, and everything was dark. But around the tomb, there was a huge crowd of more than 50 to 60 people. So I asked my Iranian friends, what's happening here? They said, but that is a daily occurrence. This man has died several hundred years ago, but every day there are people around his tomb. And it was as though he had died in the afternoon. And there were people reading Hafiz around the tomb, others were talking on their telephone, text to their loved ones and reading Hafiz poetry and so on. But it was amazing, because those are the things we human beings live for. And for me, it was a very good experience of seeing what a poet can do to human beings. Of course, we have lost that sense of poetry now in our culture for some reason. Then there is one, a very brief one from Hafiz. It's just 2 sentences. And I said, wow, when I read this, you can read it the way you want. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. I often think about this because we sometimes think, oh, we did so much, nobody appreciated it. Well, we spend so much of our lives fighting, nobody comes. Nobody comes to see us, nobody comes to visit us. Or we are doing this much amount, but nobody really bothers about it. And then you look at this and you say, wow. Then you can really place whatever you do in a proper setting. There is one more. Sort of describes when people say that activists make a lot of money or they do things for money. You can look at Father Bismarck was a person who was so 100% committed. I thought he's a very good example because he said this guy, I mean, whatever he did, you can claim Claude Alvares, did all this for money, and you can claim others. But Bismarck, he was a priest, and priests, of course, I come from the Christian religion, though I'm mostly outside nowadays. But priests, normally nobody joins the priesthood for money. I mean, you don't get any money. I mean, you get some money, you're grateful for it. But Rumi says, if you want money more than anything else, you will be bought and sold. If you want money more than anything else, you will be bought and sold. If you have a greed for food, you will become a loaf of bread. This is the truth. Whatever you love, you are. I sometimes read these poems to youngsters because they all think that, if they can drive themselves hard and become successful slaves of corporates, make a lot of living and make a lot of money. And I tell them, warn them. And I read this poem to them. And I said, read, 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 because these are the poets speaking. And poets always speak the truth. They don't manipulate the truth. They always speak directly from the truth. And what a marvelous description of Father Bismarck. And the final poem before I end is the one written by Pablo Neruda. We all know that Bismarck died a very sudden death. I want to use that occasion today for talking about most of us who are dying slowly. There's this beautiful poem by Pablo Neruda. You start dying slowly if you do not travel, if you do not read, if you do not listen to the sounds of life, if you do not appreciate yourself. You start dying slowly when you kill your self-esteem, when you do not let others help you. You start dying slowly if you become a slave of your habits, walking every day on the same paths, if you do not change your routine, if you do not wear different colors, or you do not speak to those you don't know. You start dying slowly if you avoid wanting to feel passion and its turbulent emotions, those which make your eyes glisten and your heart beat fast. You start dying slowly if you do not change your life when you are not satisfied with your job or with your love. If you do not risk what is safe for the uncertain. If you do not go after a dream, if you do not allow yourself at least once in your lifetime to run away from sensible advice. I thought that when we talk about people going away fast, we should talk about people going away slowly. And before I end, one small story about what social activists like Bismarck really do. There was an American Indian tribe which had a habit of moving around from place to place. They would set up their tents, spend the day, a couple of days, look out for food, and when everything was exhausted, they would go to another place and set up their tents and do the same thing. And one day when they did so, they found they had disturbed the habitat of a wolf and her children. So they were very disturbed about this. They said, how did this happen? We can't live and eke out a living by disturbing somebody else in this way. So they adopted a new principle. They said, next time, we go to a new place, and when we sit and assemble in our circle to decide matters, one space will be kept for the voice of the wolf. And only then will we decide. This is what activists generally do, while the rest of society continues with their routine tasks. They, and I include many of you here I can see, who have been very good wolves, stand up and speak for the wolf. Thank you very much for coming for this commemorative.